Alright boys, welcome back to another Maybe Lewis MMA UFC video. So today, I want to talk about the fights I think they should make after UFC 324. We playing matchmaker today, boys. So let's get right into it. Starting off with the winner of the main event, the now interim lightweight champion, Justin Gaethje. It's a no-brainer. Obviously, I think he's fighting Ilia Topuria next, probably at the White House. Yeah, not much else to say about that. Gaethje gets sparked out cold in round 1. And yeah, just a easy defense for Ilia. Hopefully he fights Arnold after. But yeah. Now for the loser, Paddy Pimblett. Obviously took a lot of damage in this fight. He'll probably take a couple months off. Didn't look he looked horrible, not gonna lie, but stood in there, obviously ate a few shots. Pretty sure he won like one round I'll give him. But I think Paddy Pimblett should fight the winner of Dan Hooker versus BSD. That's going down this weekend at 325. I think Pimblett looked pretty good, and it proves that I'm saying he looked good enough to where he could give a good fight to Hooker or BSD. It'll be a good test for either of them, I'd say. Obviously, Pimblett and Hooker, they have beef, so if he wins them, if Hooker wins versus BSD, obviously you have that storyline. If BSD wins, it's kind of like prospect versus prospect, I guess, at lightweight. Two young guys fighting. But yeah, I think it'll be a good bounce back for Pimblett. You know, Hooker, BSD, two tough guys. Could prove that he's here to stay at lightweight with a win over either of them. Yeah. Next fighter I want to talk about, Sugar Sean O'Malley. Obviously beat Yadong in the co-main of 324. Won rounds 1 and 3 pretty convincingly, I'd say. Picked apart Yadong in round 3. Don't think he got himself a title shot in that fight. And I don't think Umar, who fought on this card as well, got a title shot either. So, who says Umar versus O'Malley? Sounds pretty good to me, you know. Both guys, I say Peter Yan and Marab run that trilogy, and then O'Malley and Umar fight for the #1 title shot. Sounds pretty good to me, you know. O'Malley, obviously, pretty tall, lengthy striker. Umar is also a striker. People try to categorize him as a grappler. I say Umar's a striker. Would be a pretty high level and good fight, boys. Now, Song Yadong, the loser. Had pretty good grappling, but besides that, had some good leg kicks, but did no damage to O'Malley, really, with his hands. I think Song Yadong would be a good test for someone who's on the rise, Ayman Zahabi. I think that would be a good fight, you know. Get Zahabi another high-level opponent. You know, he just fought Chito Vera, beat him by decision. I think he'll give a good fight to Yadong, honestly. You know, Zahabi, cardio's pretty good. He's a good high-pressure fighter. Good striking, wrestling, you know, pretty good, well-rounded fighter. I think Yadong could give him some problems, though. You know, be a good test for Zahabi, see how good he really is at bantamweight. Now, next fighter we want to talk about, boys. Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Going on a pretty good streak at heavyweight, you know. Could be another title contender. I think Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane, they're going to run it back. So, for the #1 contender spot, I'd say Waldo should fight Alexander Volkov, who just beat Almeida. Pretty lackluster fight. You know, I think both guys could prove themselves in this one, make a pretty good case for the title shot. And yeah, Waldo Cortes versus Alexander Volkov. You know, pretty tall. Would be a good fight. Two high-level heavyweights. Now, next fighter I want to talk about, Natalia Silva. Pretty boring fight versus Rose Namajunas. Still think she wins round 1 and 3. Obviously, I think she's the best striker behind Shevchenko in the division, so she should get the next title shot. She would have got it. I don't think if she didn't take this fight, she would have got the title shot, I'd say. But Shevchenko versus Silva would be a pretty good. I feel like Shevchenko would grapple her. You know, Silva would have to impose her will, keep the fight standing, and strike. Would be a pretty good striking match if she could do that, though. You know, Silva versus Shevchenko, would be one of the most technical fights we see for women's, I'd say, in general, in history. You know, two high-level strikers. Be a pretty good fight, you know. Get Silva her first title shot, give her experience versus Shevchenko. Yeah, that's the next fight to make. Now, Rose Namajunas looked pretty good. I know some people said she won that fight. It was a robbery. I don't think so. Still think she looked pretty good. So I think that she should fight the loser of Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber 2. because I think the winner of that will probably fight like Manon Fiorot or Aaron Blanchfield or something. But Rose Namajunas versus the loser of Grasso Barber. Obviously, she was originally supposed to fight Grasso this card, but Grasso pulled out. They booked her versus Barber. But yeah, I think whoever loses that should fight Namajunas. Yeah, women's MMA, am I right? Now, for the next fight, boys. Gene Silva. Looked really good versus Allen. I thought he 30-27'd him. You know, was patient, picking his shots. Looked really good. Striker. Now he's the number 6 featherweight in the world. And I think we'd get a banger going here, boys. Do Gene Silva versus Yair Rodriguez. Rodriguez hasn't fought in a while. Last fought Pitbull in like July of last year. He's been pretty inactive. I thought he would fight Sterling maybe, but that fight never got announced. They never fought. So I think Gene Silva to run it with Yair Rodriguez, 2 high-level strikers. You know, Silva has the power. Yair has his kicks, his height, you know, could mix up anything. You know, Yair's probably the most creative striker at featherweight, and that would just be a war, I'd say. You know, it'll probably be like Lopez versus Silva, Anoche UFC. But yeah, Silva versus Rodriguez, I'd say that's a pretty good fight to make next. Now, Arnold Allen. Also, he put up a good fight versus Silva. Looked really good, you know. Still think he could be a good gatekeeper at featherweight. So that's why I think he should fight that boy, the dog. He's on a really mean streak right now, Steve Garcia. Say that wouldn't be a banger, boys. Arnold Allen versus Steve Garcia have 2 sluggers. Allen wouldn't go down without a fight. You know, Garcia obviously would be going in there trying to finish him as he's been doing to all these guys. He just brutally finished Onama in round 1. So I think he's earned his shot at a higher level fighter. You know, obviously Arnold Allen, I think, is that guy. And he could give Steve Garcia some real problems because Garcia isn't going to go out there and finish Allen in round 1. And if he does, he's a problem. But Allen versus Garcia, that's the next fight to make. Now, just a few more winners I want to talk about on this card. Ateba Gautier. Went to decision, obviously, versus Pulayev. Dropped him a few times, but other than that, got the decision. You know, people said he got fraud checked, but I thought he looked decent in that one. You know, dropped him, but proves he's pretty. Southpaw could give him some problems, obviously. I still think he should get a shot at a higher level opponent. You know, see what he could really do. And we could see if he could try to crack the chin of Marvin Vettori. Ateba Gautier versus Marvin Vettori next. See if he's the guy to crack Marvin Vettori's chin, even drop him, maybe. But yeah, give him a higher level opponent, see what he could do, you know. Try to get him closer to the rankings at middleweight, because I still think he could be a problem there. Next fighter, Nikita Krylov. Obviously, back-to-back knockouts. Just finished Kauskas. Looked really good in that fight with his kicks, his striking, his grappling. I know he called out Jan Blachowicz for the rematch. Best we could do is Jamal Hill, bud. That's what I think they're going to do next. Nikita Krylov versus Jamal Hill. Be a good fight for Jamal Hill to get back in there, you know. Similar situation to Krylov, you know, coming off 2 losses. 1 knockout, 1 decision. But Krylov versus Hill, you know, I think it would be a pretty good fight. Try to get Hill back in there, get him a win. And obviously Krylov, he'll probably try to go out there, try to finish Hill. Prove he's here. Prove he needs that Jan Blachowicz rematch for real. And yeah, Krylov versus Hill. Who says no? Now, Alex Perez. I know they said, I heard this was the last fight in his contract. I think it'll get renewed. And I think he'll fight Steve Ersteg, the Astro Boy. You know, Ersteg, obviously, I think his last fight was Ode Osborne. Won that one pretty convincingly. Ersteg has been fighting like all the top dogs at flyweight. He fought Moreno. He fought Kai Kara France, obviously Pantoja. I think it's time for him to get a little step down, you know, see what he could do against the lower ranking flyweights. See how good he is, really. I think he's a good technical striker at flyweight. He could give Perez some problems, probably even finish him maybe. First guy to knock him out. But yeah, Perez versus Ersteg. Throw them in there together, let them boys slug it out. Now, next fighter I want to talk about, Josh Hokit. Looked really good versus Freeman. You know, that cardio, that pace he put on Freeman, gassed him at the end of round 1, middle finger TKO. Looking like a problem for heavyweights. I say get him that ranking shot. Try to get him into the rankings to get him against the higher level heavyweights, because I don't think any unranked heavyweight will beat him. I say fight the other guy who fought on this card. I know it's pretty bad. I don't want to do this to my boy, but Josh Hokit versus Derek Lewis. I think that would be a good test for Hokit, going there against a vet, most knockouts UFC history. Derek Lewis is a dog. He just got finished by Cortes, but he's still a dog, he's still the black beast. And yeah, Hokit versus Lewis, see what he's really made of, see if he could finish someone like Derek Lewis and boost himself into the rankings and put a spotlight on his name. Last winner I want to talk about, boys. Ty Miller. Obviously finished Fugit round 1. Looks pretty good. I think he's a welterweight, I'm pretty sure. Looks pretty good. Striker. I think he should fight Charles Radke. I feel like Charles Radke is like the test for all the up-and-coming welterweights. So I think it's Ty Miller's time, Obviously, Radke, he fought Prates on his rise. He fought Mike Malott. Both finished him. So I honestly think Ty Miller could finish him as well. But yeah, give him that test. Give him that Charles Radke test and see how good he could be at welterweight. But yeah, boys, just wanted to make this video real quick to tell you guys the fights I think they should make after 224. Let me know in the comments if you boys agree with any of these. If you disagree, let me know. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Look out for my 325 predictions video coming soon. And yeah, hope you boys got a good one. Peace.